Hey guys, Papa Pete here, and I wanted to pop on and make a very quick video because it's kind of a special day. September 9th, I always thought of September 9th before as like 9999 was the launch of the Dreamcast, and for whatever reason I always remember that 9909 was the launch of Beatles Rock Band because that was a big thing back in the day. But I learned something this morning that today would have been the 65th birthday of Intellivision Productions former president Keith Robinson. Now, Keith passed away June 15th, 2017, but there's been nobody else in the history of gaming, to me personally, who has done more for my personal favorite, which is the Intellivision. Now, Keith Robinson is the most influential figure in the history of Intellivision. He was the president of Intellivision Productions from the 90s right up until his untimely death back in 2017. It was June 15th. And he did such amazing things to keep this old system from my youth in the limelight. He kept it going. There were so many people in the world who loved Intellivision. Nobody in the world more than Keith did. Keith and Steve Roney really can be credited with keeping it going all those years. He introduced things with Steve's help like the Intellivision Rocks, Intellivision Lives. They're on the PC. There was little games that you could play, little emulator games that you could download for the PC to play some of the games. I remember there was Astro Smash and a couple other games. They come in 3-packs, I think. And then later on he expanded to the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. There were Intellivision Lives games for those systems, and they were really popular at the time. So Intellivision didn't fade away. It stayed in the limelight. It was always sort of on the fringe because it wasn't the most modern technology, but those of us from that day and age who loved the system and grew up with it always had an opportunity to play it. And he kept trying to expand things. He was always present at conventions, at all kinds of electronic shows, and he never let Intellivision fade. It's really shown, like some of the homebrew things that I have here today. There was always a great community around the Intellivision, a different type of community than you'll see with any other video game system from back in that day or even today, really. I know that when he passed away in 2017, he used to be on the Intellivisionaries podcast a lot because he lived right near Nurmix, Paul Nurminen, and he was just such a fabulous guest to have on the show because he could tell stories, let me tell you, and you could sit and listen to Keith for years. I heard him tell so many stories, and this gets back to as well like the Tron Solar Sailor game, which was his big baby for Intellivision back in the early days when it was still Mattel. They actually had to release the episode about Tron Solar Sailor after Keith's passing, but they were able to bring out enough archive footage, interview footage with Keith, that it was an absolutely fabulous episode. Again, Keith is in lots of different episodes. If you've never listened to Keith speak, he is just so jovial, so enthusiastic about the system. It's a pleasure to listen to him talk. Now, this sort of comes up to the point of his passing in 2017. I can remember hearing about it when I first saw it on Facebook, which everybody sees everything on Facebook first nowadays. The first thing that came to mind is, what's going to happen to Intellivision now? Because Keith was the driving force behind it. About a month and a half or so, or a month later, maybe less than a month afterwards, the Intellivisionaries had a special tribute show to Keith, and they had various people on there talking about Keith and about things that how it would go from there. And nobody really knew. One of the people they had on there talking, he'd been on several episodes of the Intellivisionaries before, was Tommy Tallarico. And Tommy came on and talked about how he had met Keith back in the day when he was doing the Electric Playground, and how he, same age as me, born the same year Tommy was, had the same sort of background that I did. He loved Intellivision from when he was a kid, and he thought that the whole Intellivision community owed it to Keith to keep the spirit of Intellivision alive for the future, and that he would do whatever he could to make sure that happened. You know, one of the things that I noticed the most about Tommy talking about Keith was he said that Keith was the type of person who was always thinking about his friends and other people first. His Facebook posts were never about, hey, I was at such and such a place doing this today, or come see me do this, or or about himself. It was always something along the line of, maybe they hadn't seen somebody in quite a while, but he heard that a friend of his was doing something, and he'd say, hey, this is my friend so-and-so, and look what they're doing today. You should go check it out because it's really cool. This is a great person, blah, 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 blah. What a special type of person Keith was to be focused like that on other people. And I look at my own Papa Pete page on Facebook, and I think that's kind of what I want to do. Is I love this community. The community for Intellivision, like I've said, is just so amazing. Not just in Intellivision, but the YouTube community in general. And it is so much good faith that when you meet good people, you may never meet them face to face, but you can make a great impression on somebody just by doing something like that for them to show them how much you really do care. Well, I gotta say, it's been a month now since the big special event, and I didn't put out a reaction video to it because it was sort of different. I really, obviously it announced the delay in the Amico production. And if somebody didn't see that coming, I mean, they're totally naive. Obviously, it's going to have to be delayed given all the things that were going on in the world. And I'm really happy that it was, because nothing would be worse than to have a rush system or to not be able to put the maximum effort into it as possible. So I think they made a really good decision by delaying it till April. And I'm really happy that they're doing so. And the thing that impressed me the most about that, after a bit of time for reflection, I was looking for a lot of information on games in that special event. And they were there, and there were some new games introduced, but it wasn't quite as revolutionary as I thought. They showed the hardware, again, but it wasn't quite as, I'm going to say revolutionary. It wasn't quite as clear as I was hoping, but at the same time, it really is understandable why, because it's still in production. So they showed that the system works. I've seen all kinds of videos about people who've done this system, whether it's John Riggs or Metal Jesus or Smash JT. They've all used the system, so I have no doubts about whether the system or not, works or not. Plus, it was really aimed at retailers, at developers, and it was trying to prove the validity of the entire organization. And how much more can you do that than to show the worldwide organizational web that Tommy has created for the Amico? Anyhow, I gotta say this. I really want to give a little bit of tribute to Keith again today, because Keith kept something from my life going through for 20-some years when nobody else would have done so. He was the driving force behind it. And thank you very much as well to Tommy Tallarico for creating Intellivision Entertainment, and Steve Roney for picking up Intellivision Productions. See the Blue Sky Rangers games. Steve has been producing all kinds of different Blue Sky Rangers games for some of the older stuff. And of course, Tommy's taking the Intellivision name and bringing it back into the living room where games used to be at the time. I remember playing tournaments. We'd sit around and play tournaments of games. Games were short. You wouldn't be locked away in your closet playing a game online against somebody you never met before, and it was so much trolling and negativity in that. It was just sitting around and having a lot of fun face to face. And man, I can't wait to get back to that style of gaming. Anyway, one last time, thank you, Steve Roney. Thank you, Tommy Tallarico, for all you're doing to keep Intellivision going. You really did pick up the ball from Keith. Keith would be proud. Keith would be happy. And most of all, cheers. Here's to Keith Robinson, 65 years old today. May his memory never be forgotten.
I can say all this scientific stuff about, oh yes indeed, and this was the first, this was the web and all that, but the thing is, it's fun. And if you're not having fun, you shouldn't be doing whatever you're doing.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age of 50, you don't have to.
Paul Nerman, or Nermix, from the Intellivisionaries podcast. I'm also part of the Amico development team. And you're watching Papa Pete, the old guy gamer.
What the hell?